a woman of valor who can find, for her worth is far above rubies. That's the beginning of the song that Jewish men traditionally sing to their wives at Friday night dinner. When I was born, my mother took one look at the mop of curly hair and the mischievous eyes, and she knew it was going to be a challenge to civilize her wild child. And so she determined to turn me somehow or other into a woman of valor and make my price far above not just rubies, but sapphires, emeralds, and diamonds.
Right.
In that task, she enlisted the aid of the matriarchs. My grandmother, my great-aunt Frida, my great-aunt Bernice, and to set a role model, she chose a fourth matriarch, one who was actually a few months younger than me, but it took a while to come up with a plan. Barbie. Now, each of my relatives had a particular characteristic that they were supposed to teach me. Grandma's skill was hygiene. This was mostly experienced by the vast quantities of wash and dry moist towelettes that she carried in her purse at all times. She also reacted to every single sniffle with vast sprays of disinfectant, so that the air in my grandparents' apartment was about 15% Lysol. But her greatest weapon was scalding hot water and harsh yellow soap that were applied after almost any trip outside. Now, I don't believe I was a particularly dirty child, but we did live near the beach, and so almost any time I went outside, I was quickly covered in a thin patina of fine white sand and subject to those scalding baths, which I cried about, as any normal person would. Barbie, of course, rarely went outside, and she could tolerate the hottest water with no complaints. Valor score, Barbie 1, Miriam 0. Aunt Frida was in charge of thrift. This was really a misunderstanding on my mother's part, because it was the 1960s and we didn't know about hoarders yet. Frida's motto was, "Save it, it might be useful." And as far as I could tell, she had worn the same two dresses since she immigrated to the United States in 1920. This approach was not going to work very well for me because I was growing rapidly and I changed sizes about every time somebody blinked. Barbie, of course, remained the same size all the time. And she was small enough that my mother could make sew clothes for her out of the remnants left from sewing the curtains for the house, and could knit for her with just scraps of yarn without any complaints about the scratchiness of Woolworth's mohair. My interest in clothes was fairly limited, and when I played with Barbie, she mostly wore this black unitard like Emma Peel from The Avengers, in which she fought off the wildest of wild animals. And, she didn't attack very well, and ran from Russian spies. Valor score, Barbie 2, Miriam 0. Aunt Bernice was in charge of a sort of demure femininity. Bernice lived in a very neat little bungalow, which she had filled with reproduction paintings of Degas ballerinas, porcelain figurines of shepherdesses, and her prized possession, a piano on which she could play exactly one piece, the Little Fairy Waltz. It was Bernice who, when I requested a chemistry set for my birthday, bought me a make-your-own perfume kit as her idea of an appropriate feminine alternative. Now, there was no way I was ever going to live up to those ideals, but the worst of it all was that what Bernice was really supposed to teach me was to be soft-spoken. My mother had not factored in that I also heard the rest of her family. My grandmother could cuss in 4 languages, and Frida's motto was based on Alice Longworth Roosevelt's claim that if you don't have something nice to say, sit next to me. Barbie, of course, never spoke a word. Valor score, Barbie 3, Miriam 0. But despite all of those failures at turning into what my mother wanted me to be, I somehow or other grew up and became successful, and I was able to afford my own rubies. Well, actually, this is inherited from Aunt Frida. And it's not real, but, but I've done a little bit of research on all of this, and I've looked up what the price of rubies is now. They go for about $10,000 a carat. The original Barbie has sold as high as $27,000 in auction. My mother made a big mistake. Instead of wanting my price to be above rubies, she should have wanted for me to have a price above Barbies. But instead, my Barbie got given to my cousin Ellen, and I have to go and find my own ways of success and valor in the world. But I think I'm still doing okay, and I may not be the woman of valor my mother wanted me to be, but I'm still ahead of Barbie.